Happy Monday. John Lorden here with another episode of Brain Scratch Case Cracked. Thank you so much for joining me here today. Want to give you guys another reminder. American Crime Fest is coming up. Don't miss it. Another chance to meet myself, a bunch of your favorite podcasters, other YouTubers. It's happening November 8th, 9th, and 10th in Wildwood, New Jersey. And if you use code SCRATCH in all caps, you will get an additional 10% off. A big thank you to Christy Arnhart for working so hard on today's case. This is one that we like to call When Halloween Was Banned. Oil City in Pennsylvania in the northern United States has a population of 9,863 people and is located at a bend in the Allegheny River at the mouth of Oil Creek. The first settlers came to Oil City in the 1860s for the growing iron industry. After the first oil wells were drilled, they became central to the petroleum industry, hosting the headquarters for Pennzoil, Quaker State, and Wolf's Head Motor Oil companies. The first half of the 20th century was a prosperous one for the town. Unfortunately, after the collapse of the steel industry in the 1970s, oil companies started to leave the region, and the local economy began a slow downfall. Today, residents enjoy Oil City's suburban life, with tourism playing a prominent role. The area offers nature trails, Victorian architecture, and fossils that can be seen on the bluffs around town. But above all else, its residents enjoy the annual Oil Heritage Festival, which helps the community to remember its past prosperity. Nearly everyone in town took part in the various activities offered, and 11-year-old Shana Howe was no different. On October 27, 1992, this shy, blue-eyed girl left her house dressed as a gymnast in a turquoise and black leotard. After kissing her mother Lucy goodbye, she headed out the door to school. Even though it was still 4 days until Halloween, Shana had a party to go to that day. After school, she joined her Girl Scout troop and sang for residents at one of Oil City's retirement homes, and then walked to a nearby church where her Girl Scout group was holding a Halloween party. With the church just 2 blocks from her house, Shana was expected to walk back home by 8 p.m. Unfortunately, she would never make it. By 10 p.m., her frantic mother decided that it was time to call the police. But after search parties scoured the properties around their home, no signs of Shana could be found. At the end of the night, the only thing investigators had to show for their efforts were reports of a tall, unkempt man snatching a little girl and forcing her into a rust-colored car. 2 days later, just 8 miles from town, searchers found what no one expected: Shana's turquoise and black leotard. After her mother identified the piece of clothing, panic started to set in for everyone. Shana had to be found quickly. The next morning, searchers found Shana's body in a rocky creek bed near a place known to locals as Coulter's Hole. Searchers found her face down at the bottom of a 30-foot railroad trestle wedged between a rock and a log, her small feet partially submerged in a shallow stream. Even though Shana had been sexually assaulted, the coroner stated that injuries from the fall from the top of the trestle were most likely the cause of death. But it was impossible for him to say whether she was forced, thrown, jumped, or fell from the bridge. One thing he could say with certainty was that Shana was alive as she plunged to her death. A broken arm and dislocated shoulder suggested that she had tried to break her fall. On October 31st, Oil City residents took part in a silent, candlelit procession in honor of Shana. As the group walked, they prayed and comforted each other, retracing steps that Shana had taken from the First Free Methodist Church to Reed and West 1st Street, where it's believed that she was abducted. By the 1st of November, fears in town prompted Shana's parents to help organize a child safety group called Operation Kid Watch. By the end of the month, the town even offered a $6,000 reward for information leading to the conviction of whoever had kidnapped and killed Shana. As Thanksgiving and Christmas passed, local police and the FBI chased leads as far as Canada, but at the end of the year, they were still no closer to finding the murderer. In the wake of the killing, with no arrests made, suspicion and fear gripped Oil City. Locked doors became the norm for the first time ever, and children were seldom allowed to venture out alone. Martial arts studios offered child self-defense classes, and posters popped up around town with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles urging children to run, resist, or cry for help if a stranger approached. A vandal even spray painted a warning for elementary school students, proclaiming that they could be next. At last, in 1993, residents believed they had at least a partial solution for their problems. The city council decided to place a ban on most Halloween activities and only allow trick-or-treating for 2 hours in the afternoon. 10 years later, in 2002, investigators decided to revisit some of their earlier suspects by re-interviewing a man named Eldred Walker. The confession he gave under questioning was heartbreaking. He revealed that back in 1992, he had 2 friends staying with him, James and Timothy O'Brien, who were brothers. As a prank, the 3 had decided to abduct the child of a friend. After holding the 8-year-old for a few hours, they planned to release him. But then at the last minute, it was decided that a little girl would get more attention. On the evening of October 27th, Walker spotted Shana on her way home and approached her with the excuse of buying Girl Scout cookies. As she got close, he grabbed her, put his hand over her mouth to muffle her screams, and shoved her into the O'Brien's car. After arriving back at his house, the O'Brien brothers took Shana to a second-floor room. Walker said that while he cooked spaghetti in the kitchen, he heard her cry. In outrage, he insisted that the O'Briens leave his home. Eldred states that he had no involvement in her death. As investigators were questioning Walker, tests were being run on DNA found on Shana's leotard. This DNA evidence linked to James O'Brien, who was already serving time in prison for attempting to kidnap a woman in 1995. Even though Walker changed his story several times under questioning, prosecutors decided to offer him a plea deal. For testimony against the brothers, he was allowed to plead guilty to third-degree murder and kidnapping with a sentence of 20 to 40 years. On October 26, 2005, almost 13 years to the day of her murder, a jury found James and Timothy O'Brien guilty of murder and sexual assault. Their sentence would be life in prison without possibility of parole. With relief, Shana's mother, Lucy Mae Brown, along with other relatives, embraced, held hands, and bowed their heads. Shana's uncle, Keith Sybil, pumped his right fist in the air and mouthed, "Yes." "This is justice," Mrs. Brown said. "I still have a hole in my heart, but I needed it to be solved. They took a little girl's life. They spent 12 years living their lives. My daughter would have been 24, but what does she have? Nothing." Soon after the trial ended, Mrs. Brown made plans to go to the cemetery where her daughter is buried to tell her daughter about the trial. "I'm going to tell her what's been happening and tell her she can rest in heaven." Even with Shana's murderers behind bars, it would take 3 more years and the help of a 10-year-old 5th grader for the town to truly right itself. Elizabeth Roast decided enough was enough. With 175 signatures on a petition, Elizabeth persuaded the city council to set aside their 16-year ban and revive Halloween for the children of Oil City. After some deliberation, the town council decided to restore Halloween, allowing Elizabeth and her friends to celebrate the holiday in their own town again. Of course, even today, Shana's tragic loss still haunts the community, but she is not forgotten. Case cracked. Thank you to Wikipedia, the 13th Floor, Niche.com, the Titusville Herald, AETV.com, New York Daily News, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, and Newspapers.com for information contributing to today's story. A lot of disturbing aspects to today's story. Of course, we didn't really go into the level of detail that we could have with this. I already have a feeling this video is going to be demonetized, but I really wanted to get the message out about safety during Halloween. I love Halloween. Halloween's one of my favorite holidays, but there's an aspect to it that is troubling. We've got children roaming the streets, sometimes into the night. One of the big risks with that is, of course, cars. car accidents and fatalities from cars hitting pedestrians skyrockets on Halloween. So there's a lot of safety factors. On the last episode of Crime After Crime that Danielle and I released, we actually do a whole segment at the start of the episode about some of those safety factors. So you might want to check that out. It is Crime After Crime that was released on October 1st. It's titled Haunted Houses. Check it out for the safety information. We got a lot of good stuff in there. So there's another troubling aspect for me, and that's this Walker guy thinking that he's not responsible for her murder. I just don't understand how you can plan on kidnapping a child. Like, how was that supposed to play out? You guys were going to do it as a joke, and you wanted more attention, so you decided to kidnap a little girl. What was the end game? Were you going to let her go at a store or, have a big party? Hey, we were just kidding. I don't get it. I don't get how else would this have played out? Even if you kidnapped a little girl and you let her go later, she's then going to be able to point you guys out, and you're probably going to get nailed for kidnapping. So it's one of those things. I don't know if I really believe his story or not, but I'm thankful that he got charged. He's serving a pretty good amount of time. And then, of course, we have the brothers that won't see freedom again in their lives. So unfortunately, none of that brings back Shana, and that's certainly a tragedy in this case. But in a bit of a bright spot in this case, it's interesting to me that we have a child that's the focus of this case that causes this town to really put these bans in place on Halloween. But then we have kids that also undo that years later. 16 years later, a little girl gets a petition together. There's another little girl that wanted to honor Shana as well. In October of 2015, Kinnear Randy wanted to do something that would honor Shana, but also let other people hear the story about Shana, maybe people that didn't know about it. So she posted on Facebook and had hundreds of citizens turn out for a balloon launch. The balloons carried an index card with messages about Shana. She said, "I wanted to make sure that everyone remembers her. This way, I can send a present up to heaven." There's also a Cold Case Files episode about this. We're going to have a link to that down below. You don't need any special subscription. You can watch it. It'll just ask you what type of ad experience that you want. But if you want to learn more detail and get into this case a bit more, that's a great way to do it. Of course, we'll also have all the sources down below. Before I end today's episode, I want to give a big thank you to new patron Kim Shine, and a thank you to Amy Coggill, who increased her pledge. If you would like to support the channel, you can do that over at www.lordandarts.com. Join Patreon, sign up for PayPal, buy some merch. All of it helps keep me here doing what I love doing, spending time with you guys. Take care, everyone. Keep your family safe this Halloween season, and we will be back with an episode of Searchlight on Wednesday. I want to give a very big thank you to Christy once again for this episode. And just know, Christy's working really hard to make sure that all case cracks this month are Halloween themed. So wish her luck if you follow her on social media. Take care, everyone. We'll see you again soon on the Lord and Arts channel.